The dust over Sagebrush Station rose in lazy spirals as the noon train chugged away, leaving the tiny frontier platform buzzing with whispers, footsteps, and the distant creak of wagon wheels. And right in the middle of it all stood Wade Harlow, the broad-shouldered cowboy who swore he'd never need anyone, squinting against the sun as he clutched a crumpled letter that had already changed his life more than he wanted to admit. Because in neat, careful script it said, "Your bride is scheduled to arrive on the 14th. Please be prompt." Wade shifted his weight, hat tilted low, his jaw working as he watched the last plume of smoke vanish into the shimmering horizon, and he wondered for the 100th time if he'd made the dumbest decision in Harlow family history. And that was saying something, considering his brother once tried to shoe a mule backward. But the ranch was too big, the work too hard, the nights too quiet, and every time he rode across that empty land he kept catching himself talking to the wind. So one desperate evening, with a bad storm rolling in loneliness, howling louder than the thunder, he'd traced his name at the bottom of a mail-order bride contract and sent it off with a prayer and a curse. Now here he was, boots dusty, palms sweating, feeling like a kid about to take a test he hadn't studied for, while the townfolk lined the boardwalk pretending not to stare, especially Mrs. Cartwright, from the general store, who acted like her. Knitting needed the full attention of her soul, while her eyes stayed fixed on Wade like he was the main show at the county fair. He cleared his throat and looked back at the platform, heart-kicking when he finally saw her. Saw something, a shadow crossing the open door of the last passenger car, then a shape ducking down as if the world wasn't built quite big enough for her. The first thing he noticed was her height. She stepped down from the train and kept stepping until he realized she was nearly as tall as he was, maybe taller, not in a lanky way, but solid and powerful, like she'd been carved out of mountain rock and sun-baked wheat fields. Her shoulders broad under a simple beige dress that hugged her strong arms and made the town's flimsy gossip about a delicate mail-order lady sound like a cruel joke. Her dark hair was braided and coiled at the back of her head, and her skin was the warm color of someone who had never had the luxury of staying in the shade. Eyes, deep brown and sharp, swept the platform with open suspicion, as if she was prepared to throw a punch at the first person who took one step too close. The station went quiet, the way it does right before a storm hits, and Wade heard someone whisper, "She's huge," in a tone that made his jaw clench. Not from agreement, though he couldn't deny the word fit, but from the way they said it, like huge meant wrong. The woman's gaze found him, flickering down to the letter in his hand that matched the one pressed tight against her chest, and he felt a jolt of something, fear, curiosity, maybe destiny, run through him. He forced his boots to move until they were standing an arm's length apart, the brim of his hat level with her steady stare. "You Wade Harlow?" she asked, voice low and strong, with an accent that hinted at somewhere east, maybe mills and factories instead of open plains. He nodded, suddenly aware of the dust on his shirt, the scar on his chin, the fact that he had ordered a wife like a man orders a plow. "That's me," he managed. "You must be Lydia." She hesitated for half a heartbeat, as if checking the name still belonged to her. "Lydia Kane," she said. "The company called me a reliable asset. I guess that means I can lift more than a tea cup." There was a flash of bitterness there, so quick most folks would miss it, but Wade had spent years reading the subtle shifts of weather and cattle. He recognized a storm when he saw one brewing under the surface. "Well," he said, feeling a crooked smile tug at his mouth, "out here, a woman who can lift more than a teacup is worth her weight in gold." Something in her expression softened just a fraction, and she exhaled slowly, as if she'd been holding her breath since the wheels of the train first screeched into the station. Then the station master coughed theatrically, papers rustling, and the townsfolk remembered they were entitled to gossip, so the whispers wrapped around them again. "You gonna introduce us or just stand there?" Mrs. Cartwright called from her porch, trying to sound warm but not succeeding entirely. Lydia's jaw flexed. She shifted the worn satchel on her shoulder, and Wade stepped closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "You ready to get out of here?" he asked. "Can't promise the ranch is as pretty as a city park, but it's honest and it's quiet." Lydia's eyes flicked to the watching faces, then back to him. Quiet sounds nice, she said. People staring, not so much. Wade looked around at the town, at the way the men leaned on posts and the women paused their chores, all of them measuring her like she was some unusual piece of livestock up for auction, and he felt an unexpected surge of protectiveness that surprised him with its intensity. They'll get bored, he said. Eventually, then, because something about her straight spine and clenched fists made him want to see her smile. He tipped his hat and added, and if they don't, I've got a stubborn bull you can toss in front of them. Give them something else to talk about. A ghost of a smile tugged at her lips, and he knew then that under the hard shell was someone who wanted to laugh but had learned not to trust the world with that softness. We'll see, she murmured. They loaded her modest trunk into the wagon, Lydia insisting on lifting one side herself. Wade watched, eyebrows inching up as she hoisted it with ease that would put some ranch hands to shame, muscles flexing beneath the fabric of her dress. One of the younger cowboys, Tommy, whistled low. Your bride could probably toss you over that rail, boss, he joked, and Lydia's head whipped around, eyes narrowing. She took a single step toward him, towering enough that he instinctively took a step back. I don't toss people, she said coolly, unless they ask for it. Wade bit back a laugh at Tommy's instant loss of color and shot him a warning look that said, mind your mouth. As they rolled out of town, dust curling behind the wagon wheels, Lydia sat beside Wade on the wooden seat, back straight, hands folded tightly in her lap as if she was bracing herself for some unseen impact. The road stretched long and empty ahead, flanked by endless pasture and scattered mesquite trees. For a while, silence rode between them. You expected someone else? She asked suddenly, staring straight ahead. Smaller, maybe softer, less likely to scare your pals back. There. Wade considered pretending, smoothing it over with a polite lie, but something in her tone told him she'd hear it and it would land like yet another disappointment. I didn't know what to expect, he admitted. That's the truth. But I've been short on strong hands and strong backs. And you look like you've got both. He paused, then added, and I didn't send for a doll to put on a shelf. Send for a partner. Lydia's fingers loosened slightly. Partners don't usually get bought, she muttered. I paid the agency for the introduction, he said carefully. Not for you. Figured you were already paid plenty in work and surviving, in whatever brought you here. She turned to look at him then, really look, as if weighing his words not just by their sound but by the way. His shoulders stayed easy, the way his eyes didn't flinch from hers. You talk pretty for a man who spends his days with cows, she said. That an insult or a compliment, he asked. Haven't decided yet. The miles rolled by, and slowly Lydia told him bits and pieces, like chips of stone falling from a wall, a childhood spent in factory shadows, a father who drank wages faster than they could earn them, brothers who left for war and didn't all come back, foremen who grinned at the way her arms grew thick from hauling crates, and used words like freak and useful in the same breath. Men like to tell me I'm too much, she said quietly. Too big, too loud, too strong, too everything. Then they act surprised when I can carry more than they can. Wade grunted. Men like that are just afraid. Folks will notice they're not enough. The sun dropped lower, painting the sky in pink and gold, and the Harlo ranch finally came into view, sprawling across the valley like a rough-hewn promise. Weathered barns, fenced fields, a wide corral, and the main house a log structure with a wraparound porch that had seen better paint but still stood solid, like the family that built it. Lydia's gaze swept over it all, and something like awe flickered in her eyes. You own all of this? She asked. Me and the bank, Wade said, dryly, and the dust. Dust comes free. As they rolled up to the house, a pair of ranch hands emerged from the barn, pausing mid-stride when they caught sight of Lydia. Wade noticed their quick, assessing looks and the way one of them, Hank, nudged the other with a smirk. Before he could bark a warning, Lydia straightened to her full height, hopped off the wagon with a grace that belied her size, and strode toward them, hand out. Lydia Kane, she said. I'm here to work, not faint on a settee. The men blinked, then shook her hand in turn, surprise melting into grudging respect as her grip nearly folded theirs in half. Yes, ma'am, Hank muttered, flexing his fingers once she released them. Welcome to the Harlo. Inside, the house smelled of coffee, leather, and the faint echo of Wade's mother's lavender soap. even though she'd been gone 3 years now. Lydia's eyes lingered on a faded family portrait above the mantel. Wade is a lanky teenager, his parents proud and tired on either side. They gone? She asked softly. Yeah, he replied. Ma to fever, Pa to a busted heart 2 winters later. Guess he didn't know what to do with the quiet. Lydia swallowed, empathy flickering across her face but quickly buried. People who'd survived as she had didn't always know where to put their tenderness. Wade led her to the small bedroom off the main hall. Simple but clean, a sturdy bed, a chest of drawers, a single window looking out over the corral. When he set her trunk down, he realized his hands were shaking slightly. Not from the weight, but from the awareness of what this meant. That from this day on, the house wouldn't be empty when he came in at night. It's not fancy, he said, but it's yours. For as long as you want it. She stood in the doorway, fingers trailing over the bed frame, and for the first time since he'd met her, he saw uncertainty, not the defensive kind, but the raw kind, like a person who'd never been given something without wondering what would be taken in return. What do you expect from me, Wade? She asked. I know what the contract says. Cook, clean, keep the house, bear children if God allows. But what do you actually expect? He opened his mouth, then shut it, suddenly unwilling to toss out some dust-covered phrase about duty and wifely obligations. Instead, he thought of the long rides, the silent suppers, the way the wind howled through the empty house whenever a storm hit. I expect you to be yourself, he said slowly, and to let me be myself. We work the land together, share the load. We figure the rest out as we go. I won't pretend. I know how to be a husband to a stranger any more than you know how to be a wife to one. But I ain't about to try and stuff you into some little box just so folks in town feel more comfortable. Lydia stared at him, eyes searching his face for the telltale twitch of insincerity. Whatever she found there made her shoulders drop, some of the tension bleeding away. That's new, she murmured. Men usually want me to be less loud, less tall, less strong, less me. Seems to me, Wade said, I need all the you I can get if we're going to keep this place running. She huffed out a small, startled laugh, and it brightened. The room more than the wan afternoon light creeping through the window. All right. Harlo, she said, we'll see if you still feel that way after I start rearranging your kitchen. Touch my coffee pot and it's war, he warned. Fair, she replied, and for the first time, there was something like ease between them. Later that evening, after he'd shown her the pump, the pantry, and the tack room, Wade sat at the rough kitchen table with a small wooden box between them. Lydia watched, brow furrowed, as he fumbled with the latch, obviously nervous. So, he began, clearing his throat. There's one more thing. The contract said we should make it official. A ring and vows and such. Lydia stiffened, every muscle going alert, memories of rough hands and crude jokes from men back east flashing behind her eyes. If you think she started, voice sharpening, but he held up a hand quickly. Easy, he said. I'm not asking you for anything you're not ready to give. We can take the vows slow, make them mean something when we say them. But there is one thing I do want you to put on. For you, not for the company. He opened the box, revealing a simple silver ring. Not fancy, but carefully polished, the metal catching the lamplight with a soft glow. Lydia's breath hitched, tension twisting with confusion. She had expected demands, expectations, maybe even a rough grab for ownership. Instead, this man was looking at her like she had a choice. Wait, you're putting that inside me? She blurted before she could stop herself. Brain racing to all the wrong assumptions from years of crude factory humor, Wade choked, then burst into helpless laughter, head tipping back as the sound filled the kitchen. Inside you? He managed between laughs. Lydia, it's a ring. It goes on your finger. Not, Lord help me, anywhere else. Her face flamed, scarlet as she realized what she'd said, and for a horrifying moment she wanted the floorboards to open up and swallow her whole. But then his laughter, warm, genuine, utterly unmocking, wrapped around her like a blanket. And despite herself, she felt a strangled laugh bubble up in her chest. I worked with crude men, she muttered, half embarrassed, half amused. They warped my expectations of pretty much everything. Well, Wade said, eyes still shining as he reached for her hand, rough fingers surprisingly gentle. Out here, the only thing I'm putting inside you is hope, I guess, and maybe too much coffee if you let me cook." She stared at the ring, at the way it gleamed against his calloused palm, and felt something unfamiliar twist beneath her ribs. Not the wary knot of survival, not the aching emptiness of loneliness, but a tiny fragile bud of possibility. Slowly she extended her, and "All right, cowboy," she murmured. "Let's see if that ring fits." As the cool metal slid onto her finger, snug but not tight, Lydia Kane, factory giant, mail-order gamble, woman who had always been too much, felt herself step into a life that might finally be big. Enough for her. And somewhere, beyond the open window and the creak of settling logs, the wide western sky seemed to lean in, listening, ready to see what they would do next. And if you, listening to this story right now, want to know whether Lydia's gamble pays off, whether the giant bride and the stubborn cowboy managed to turn a contract into something real, make sure you stay with us, hit that subscribe button, and get ready for Chapter 2, because the real trouble is just starting out at the Harlo Ranch.